Get out of my house, Daniel. I didn't marry a broke man. You're nothing without me. You're pathetic, Mark. A poor excuse for a man. Leave now before I call security. Sign these divorce papers, Aaron. I refuse to stay shackled to a broke dreamer. You'll never be enough for me, Jason. I need a man with money, not a charity case. Pack your things, Ethan. You're broke and I'm done being your babysitter. Those were the venom-laced words Vanessa Cole spat at her husband, each one sharper than the last, each one meant to crush the man she thought was powerless. But what Vanessa never realized was that the silence in Ethan's eyes wasn't surrender, it was calculation. Behind that calm face lived a plan so ruthless, so brilliantly orchestrated, that her triumph would turn into the most brutal reversal in history. They thought they were discarding worthless men. But what none of these women knew was that the broke husbands they mocked were sitting on fortunes, $50 million waiting in silence, and revenge so brutal it would make divorce court history. Viewers, have you ever judged someone's worth by their pocket instead of their soul, only to find out too late they were the ones holding all the power? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The dining room was sharp, like glass cracking. Emma Lancaster leaned back in her chair, her diamond earrings catching the light as she sipped her wine. Across from her, Daniel Parker, her husband of 7 years, sat in his plain gray suit, the same one he had worn for 3 years now. His tie was frayed at the edge, and his hands, rough from late-night shifts at the factory, tightened around the glass of water he couldn't quite bring himself to drink. I can't keep living like this, Daniel, Emma said, her voice dripping with disdain. Every day is the same. Struggle. Bills. Embarrassment. Look at you, look at us. Do you think I married you to scrape by like some beggar in the street? Daniel's jaw clenched. He had heard versions of this speech before, but tonight something felt different, final. He looked at her across the polished oak table they had bought together years ago, back when love was enough to make everything else feel temporary. You knew who I was when you married me, Daniel said, his voice steady. I've never hidden it. I've worked every day of my life to give us a roof, food, some kind of future. Emma slammed her glass down. Future. Don't make me laugh. Do you even see yourself? You're weak, Daniel. Weak and poor. And I refuse to chain myself to failure any longer. The words cut, but her eyes cut sharper. Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. And what about vows? For richer or poorer? Was that all just performance to you? Emma smirked. It was a mistake. You're not a husband, you're a burden. And tonight, I'm done carrying you. Daniel stared at her, studying the hardness in her face, the way her features twisted with contempt. Something in him broke quietly, like a rope snapping in the dark. Emma stood, her silk gown flowing as she walked to the door. Pack your things. By tomorrow morning, I want you gone. You'll find your suitcase already waiting outside. Daniel rose slowly, his body heavy but his eyes suddenly calm. Is there someone else? He asked. Emma didn't flinch. She smirked. Maybe. Maybe not. But even if there is, he'll never be as pathetic as you. Silence stretched between them, but Emma didn't waver. She opened the door, and there it was, his suitcase, neatly packed. She had planned this, rehearsed it, executed it with precision. Daniel picked up the suitcase. His hands didn't shake. His eyes held hers for a long, unbearable moment. Then he spoke. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Emma laughed, a short, cruel sound. No, Daniel. For once, I'm making the smartest choice. Daniel stepped into the night. The door slammed behind him with a finality that shook the walls. Emma leaned against it, breathing hard, convinced she had just freed herself from dead weight. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that the man she had just discarded carried a secret that would one day unravel her world. The sound of the lock clicking behind him still echoed in Daniel's mind. He walked slowly down the street, suitcase in hand, his breath visible in the cool night air. To anyone watching, he looked like another discarded husband, the kind of man who lost his marriage because he couldn't provide enough. That's what Emma wanted people to believe. But deep inside, Daniel carried something she had never cared enough to ask about, something he wasn't ready to reveal, not yet. As he reached the corner, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, expecting silence. Instead, a message from his younger sister, Clara, "Don't let her break you. Dad's trust still stands. Call me tomorrow." He slid the phone back into his pocket, a faint smile tugging at his lips. His father's voice echoed in memory, "Never show your cards until the table is full." Back in the house, Emma poured herself another glass of wine, pacing in front of the window. She replayed Daniel's last words, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." She scoffed, but her hand trembled just enough to spill a drop on her dress. She wiped it away, forcing the thought out of her mind. The truth was, she had been planning this for months. Flashback, Emma sitting in a cafe with her best friend, Lila, whispering over cappuccinos. "You think I'll spend my whole life waiting for Daniel to strike gold? He's never going to be more than what he is. Meanwhile, Charles Reynolds is already calling me." She had smiled, her eyes sparkling at the name. Charles Reynolds, the man with deep pockets, expensive suits, and a penthouse overlooking the city. She'd been texting him behind Daniel's back for weeks. She had convinced herself it wasn't betrayal, just an upgrade. In her mind, Daniel was the past. Charles was the future. Tonight was the bridge between them. The doorbell rang. Emma startled, then straightened her gown and opened the door. Charles stood there, handsome and confident, holding a bouquet of roses so red they almost glowed. "Is it done?" he asked, his deep voice steady. Emma's lips curved. "He's gone. Finally." Charles stepped inside, glancing around the house like he already owned it. "Good. Because a woman like you shouldn't be trapped in small dreams." He brushed his lips against her cheek, the roses brushing against her arm. "With me, you'll never worry about bills again." Emma's laugh rang through the room, triumphant, almost manic. "Then let's toast to the future." What she didn't notice, as she poured wine into 2 glasses, was the small envelope Daniel had left tucked under the lamp. A letter, sealed, waiting. Outside, Daniel watched from across the street, his figure hidden in the shadows. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't broken. He was calculating. His father's words came back again, clear and sharp, "Patience, Daniel. When people show you who they are, don't fight it. Let them bury themselves. And when the time comes, rise." He turned and walked away, his suitcase heavy, but his future heavier with promise. The morning after Daniel's exile, Emma dressed in silk and pearls as if nothing had happened. In her mind, she was already Mrs. Reynolds. She stood before the mirror, rehearsing a smile that hid the ugliness of what she had done. Behind that smile was the flashback she refused to dwell on, the first years with Daniel, when they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture, when his laughter used to make her feel like the richest woman alive. She buried the memory like it never mattered. Her phone buzzed. A message from Charles lit the screen, "Dinner tonight. Where's something unforgettable?" Emma's heart fluttered, then hardened. "Goodbye, Daniel," she whispered to her reflection. Across town, Daniel sat in a small diner, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. His suitcase rested against the booth, but he wasn't alone. Clara slid into the seat opposite him, her sharp eyes scanning his tired face. "You look calm," she said. "I am," Daniel replied. "You should be furious. She humiliated you." Daniel stirred his coffee slowly, his tone steady. "Anger wastes energy. Patience builds power." Clara leaned closer. "You still haven't told her about the inheritance, have you?" Daniel's lips curved faintly. She never asked. She only saw what she wanted to see, what she thought I lacked. That's her weakness, not mine. A memory stirred. His father on the porch years ago, handing him a sealed envelope. 50 million, Daniel. Yours when the time is right. Don't flaunt it. Don't waste it. And never, ever let the wrong woman know before she's proven herself. Daniel had promised. His father had died believing his son would honor that wisdom. Clara smirked. So what now? Hide forever? No, Daniel said, his voice sharpening. I build. Quietly. I let her think she's won. Then one day, when her tower is tallest, I'll be the one to pull the ground from under it. Clara studied him. Brutal revenge. Daniel's eyes darkened. The kind she'll never see coming. Meanwhile, Emma stepped out of a boutique with shopping bags in both hands. She walked with the lightness of someone who believed the universe had rewarded her cruelty. Her friend Lila caught up, heels clicking. Emma, you really kicked him out? Lila whispered. Emma grinned. Finally. Do you know how exhausting it was pretending to respect a man with no money? Lila laughed nervously, then lowered her voice. But what if he bounces back? Men like that sometimes do. Emma waved her hand, dismissive. Daniel? Please. He's finished. You'll see tonight. Charles is the kind of man I was meant to be with. Power. Status. Real money. She didn't notice the old man across the street watching her with piercing eyes, Mr. Hawthorne, Daniel's family lawyer. He had seen the suitcase last night, the tears Daniel refused to show. He had also seen the fire in Daniel's eyes when he spoke of patience. Hawthorne adjusted his hat, whispering to himself, she has no idea what's coming. Emma twirled her shopping bag, laughing at nothing. For her, life was about to begin. For Daniel, the game had just started. Emma walked arm in arm with Charles into a glittering restaurant where chandeliers dripped gold and every eye turned to watch them. She loved the whispers, that's Emma Lancaster, isn't she? With Charles Reynolds. Each murmur stroked her pride like silk. She ordered champagne without looking at the menu, as if she had belonged there forever. Yet beneath her polished smile, faint echoes of her past crept in. She remembered sitting with Daniel in a cheap diner, sharing a single slice of pie because they couldn't afford two. His laugh had made her forget the price tag then. But tonight, she told herself, was proof she had risen above those days. Charles leaned closer, brushing her hand with his. You look radiant. No more scraping by, no more cheap suits. With me, you'll know what real wealth feels like. Emma's lips curved into a satisfied smile. Daniel never understood that. He thought love was enough. Charles chuckled. Love doesn't pay for penthouses. At a corner table, a journalist scribbled notes. She recognized Charles, of course, but it was Emma's sharp laugh that caught her attention. Emma never noticed, too busy raising her glass in a toast. Meanwhile, Daniel stood on the rooftop of a modest building downtown, overlooking the skyline. His phone buzzed with Clara's voice. She's flaunting him everywhere, Daniel. Tonight it's the Reynolds restaurant. Photos will be online before sunrise. Daniel's tone was calm. Let her. Every move she makes only sharpens the knife she'll one day feel. Clara hesitated. And you? You're ready to step into the boardroom, aren't you? Daniel's eyes narrowed. Not yet. She needs to climb higher before the fall. Patience. A memory struck him, his father's hand gripping his shoulder the day of the will reading. They'll underestimate you because you look simple. Never correct them. Let their arrogance be their undoing. Daniel had lived by those words ever since. Back at the restaurant, Charles ordered a bottle older than Emma herself. As the cork popped, Emma's phone buzzed. Lila's text flashed across the screen, "Be careful. People are saying Daniel's not as broke as you think." Emma's chest tightened, but she quickly laughed it off, showing Charles the screen. "My friend thinks Daniel might have secrets. Can you imagine? Him. Please." Charles smirked. "A man like that has no secrets worth counting." Emma laughed too loudly, dismissing the thought, but for a fleeting second her hand trembled on the stem of her glass. The camera flash from a nearby table froze that moment, her laughter bright, her eyes uncertain. When she and Charles finally left, reporters swarmed. "Emma, what about your husband? Have you left him for Mr. Reynolds?" She waved them off with a coy smile. Some men aren't meant for the spotlight. As the cameras captured her, Daniel stepped into the shadows across the street. He didn't shout, didn't confront. He simply watched as the woman who had once vowed forever to him clung to another man's arm. His silence was louder than any words. And deep down, Emma felt it, though she didn't understand why, like a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. Emma posed for the cameras at a charity gala, her hand draped over Charles's arm, her diamond bracelet catching every flash. She loved the attention, the whispers about how quickly she had traded up from Daniel to a man of power. "Smile wider," Charles whispered, squeezing her waist. "They're eating this up." She obeyed, but a flicker of unease crossed her face when a journalist shouted, "Emma, what happened to your husband? Is it true you left him penniless?" She smirked, tossing her hair. Some men weren't built to keep up. Laughter rippled. But behind the laughter, the words stung louder than applause. A small flashback burned, Daniel at their wedding, fumbling his vows nervously, but looking at her like she was his whole world. That gaze had once made her believe. She crushed the memory, pressing closer to Charles, convincing herself this was what she deserved. Across the room, Mr. Hawthorne observed quietly, a glass of water untouched before him. He wasn't here for charity, he was here for reconnaissance. He'd served Daniel's father for decades, drafting every line of the trust that Emma had no clue existed. As he watched her laugh too loudly, he remembered Daniel's father's words, "When arrogance blinds someone, you don't fight it. You let it lead them into a cage they built themselves." Meanwhile, Daniel sat in a darkened office with Clara beside him, the glow of spreadsheets lighting their faces. "Here," Clara said, pointing to the screen. "These are Reynolds Corporation's weak points. They've been bleeding money into shell accounts for months. If Charles is smart, he's hiding it. If he's arrogant, he's flaunting it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And Emma?" Clara shook her head. "She's flaunting him, too. She thinks she's sitting on a throne. She doesn't realize it's hollow." Daniel tapped the desk, his voice low. "Then we'll strike the cracks. Quietly. She'll never see the floor vanish until it's too late." A memory drifted, Daniel's father teaching him chess at 12 years old. "The queen thinks she rules the board. But the game always belongs to the player who can see 5 moves ahead." Daniel had learned to sacrifice pawns, to lure opponents into false victories. Tonight, Emma was laughing in Charles's shadow, but Daniel was already moving his first piece. The first move came subtly. Clara slid a folder toward him. "I contacted 2 of Charles's suppliers. Anonymous inquiries. By the end of the month, they'll question his stability." Daniel opened the folder, scanning the letters. His lips curled. Perfect. Let Emma tie herself tighter to a man already sinking. Back at the gala, Emma's phone buzzed. A message from Lila, "Be careful. Reynolds isn't as clean as he looks. People are whispering." Emma rolled her eyes, shoving the phone into her purse. She didn't notice Charles slipping away to make a call, his voice low, tense. On stage, the host called for donations. Emma raised her paddle high, shouting, 50,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She basked in it, imagining Daniel somewhere small and bitter, hearing of her triumph. But across town, Daniel signed the first document that would make her donation bounce. Emma's stilettos clicked across the marble of Charles's penthouse as she poured herself a glass of champagne. She felt untouchable, until her phone buzzed. It was the charity board. "Mrs. Lancaster," the voice said cautiously, "your $50,000 pledge from last week." It bounced. Emma's laugh was brittle. "That's impossible." "Run it again." We did. Twice. The line went silent, the humiliation louder than any words. She hung up, her chest tight, her mind racing. Charles glanced up from his laptop. "Problem?" She forced a smile. "Just a bank error." But her hand trembled against the glass. Later that night, she sat on the edge of the king-size bed, scrolling through photos of the gala. Her smile looked perfect in the camera lights, but all she saw was Daniel's face superimposed behind it, Daniel warning her, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." For a second, she wondered if he was somehow behind this. She shook her head violently. No. He's nothing. But he wasn't nothing. At that very moment, Daniel was in Hawthorne's office, signing quiet agreements that froze assets Charles had pretended were stable. Hawthorne slid papers across the desk. "Suppliers are backing away. By next quarter, Reynolds Corporation will look like a house with termites." Daniel studied the signatures, his voice low. "And Emma?" Hawthorne's eyes softened with a trace of pity. "She's welded herself to Charles's downfall. When he collapses, she collapses too." Daniel leaned back, recalling his father's lesson, "The cruelest revenge isn't fire, Daniel. It's silence. Let them laugh at you today, so tomorrow their screams sound louder." At breakfast the next morning, Emma twirled her fork as Charles snapped at his assistant over the phone. "What do you mean the shipment's delayed? Find another supplier." "I don't care how much it costs." He slammed the phone down, his jaw tight. Emma raised a brow. "Trouble?" Charles forced a smile. "Nothing I can't handle." But Emma caught the flicker in his eyes. For the first time, Charles looked less like a savior and more like a man cornered. A memory hit her, Daniel at their kitchen table, his face tired but determined, saying, "Emma, give me time. I can fix this." She had rolled her eyes back then, convinced he was weak. Now she sat across from another man hiding cracks. Her phone buzzed again. Lila's message lit the screen. "Emma, are you sure about Charles? People whisper he's sinking fast." Emma typed a reply, deleted it, then shoved the phone aside. She straightened her shoulders, refusing to show doubt. "We'll be fine," she said aloud, though no one asked. That night, she walked into a boutique to buy a new gown, only to hear the cashier's whisper to a colleague. "That's Emma Lancaster, the pledge that bounced." Emma's face flushed hot. She slammed her card on the counter. "Run it." The machine beeped. Declined. Emma's throat went dry. For the first time since she kicked Daniel out, she felt the floor shifting beneath her feet. Emma stepped into her favorite cafe wearing sunglasses large enough to hide her eyes. She had come here for comfort once, back when Daniel worked long hours and she'd wait for him with 2 cups of coffee on the table. Now she ordered a latte and sat alone, scrolling through her phone, pretending the whispers weren't about her. 2 women at the counter lowered their voices, though not low enough. "That's her, right? The one who pledged $50,000 and couldn't pay." The other giggled. "Imagine making promises bigger than your wallet." Emma's stomach twisted. She slammed her cup down harder than she meant to, spilling foam. "Jealous nobodies," she muttered. But when she looked up, she swore she saw Daniel's reflection in the cafe's glass door. She blinked, and he was gone. Later that afternoon, Charles stormed into the penthouse, his tie askew. "Do you know what they're saying about me in the financial press?" Suppliers pulling back, clients whispering. Someone's poisoning the waters. Emma's pulse raced. Who would do that? Charles glared, then softened. Enemies. Always enemies when you're this successful. He downed a glass of whiskey and sank onto the couch. For the first time, Emma noticed how tired he looked, how the confidence that once drew her and flickered like a candle fighting the wind. That night, her phone buzzed with another message from Lila. Emma, be careful. I overheard that Daniel is moving in powerful circles. He's not as powerless as you think. Emma typed furiously, Daniel. Please. He can't even keep a job. She hit send, but her hand lingered over the screen, her own words ringing hollow. She remembered a night long ago, Daniel hunched over the kitchen table, sketching plans for a startup he never told her father about. Give me time, Emma. This could change everything, he had whispered. She had laughed then, crueler than she meant. She never asked again. Across town, Daniel sat with Clara and Mr. Hawthorne in a quiet office. A stack of documents lay between them. You're officially the largest shareholder in Reynolds Corporation, Hawthorne said. Anonymous for now. But when you decide to step into the light. Daniel's voice was steady. Not yet. I want Emma to keep climbing. The higher she stands, the harder the fall. Clara smirked. You sound like father. Daniel's eyes darkened with memory, his father standing at the edge of their estate, telling him, revenge, my boy, is not a strike of lightning. It's the slow tightening of a noose. Daniel nodded to himself. The noose is almost ready. The next morning, Emma strutted into a boutique, determined to reclaim her shine. Charge it to my account, she said loudly. But the cashier gave her a pained smile. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lancaster. That account has been frozen. Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Emma's cheeks burned. She grabbed the dress and stormed out empty-handed, her heels echoing like gunshots. For the first time, she felt naked in her own city. Somewhere nearby, Daniel watched from the back of a sleek black car, his face unreadable. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply whispered to himself, this is only the beginning. Emma walked into the country club draped in a designer dress she hadn't paid for, forcing her chin high as whispers circled like vultures. Every head seemed to turn, but not with envy anymore, pity, mockery. A man near the bar muttered, that's her, the one who bounced a 50,000 pledge. His companion laughed, loud enough for Emma to hear. Champagne taste, beer wallet. Emma's cheeks burned. She forced a smile as she spotted Lila across the room. Don't listen to them, she whispered when they met. Lila hesitated. Emma, people are saying more than bounced checks. They're saying Charles's empire is crumbling. Emma scoffed. Rumors. That's all. But her hands fidgeted with the stem of her glass, the crack in her confidence widening. On the other side of the city, Daniel met with Hawthorne in a quiet boardroom. She's unraveling, Hawthorne said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were photos. Emma storming out of boutiques, Charles shouting into phones, headlines hinting at instability. Daniel studied them, expression calm but eyes hard. Good. Let her feel the ground shift. Let her look over her shoulder and wonder if it's me. Hawthorne leaned in. Are you ready to reveal the inheritance? Daniel shook his head. Not yet. The knife must twist deeper. She threw me out for being poor. When the world finally sees what I am, she'll already be drowning. Emma's phone buzzed as she tried to steady her breath. A message from her mother, sharp as always, Emma, what have you done? People are saying you're finished. I warned you not to be reckless. Emma's throat tightened. For a flash, she remembered standing in her childhood kitchen, her mother's voice hissing, men with money are all that matter. Don't end up with a nobody. That voice had driven her to Daniel in the beginning, because he was kind, gentle, unlike the cold men her mother praised. But in the end, her mother's words had poisoned her. Love won't pay the bills. She shoved the memory aside and marched to Charles. Tell me the truth. Is everything falling apart? Charles snapped, stop nagging. Do you think money just grows on trees? Do you know how hard I work to keep you in silk? Emma froze. It was the same tone Daniel once used, not in anger, but in exhaustion, when she mocked him for working late shifts. Except Charles wasn't exhausted, he was angry, cornered. Don't raise your voice at me, she hissed. Then stop acting like a queen when you've brought nothing to the table, he shot back. The words cut like glass. Gasps echoed, people had heard. Emma's perfect image shattered in real time. Her legs wobbled, but she forced herself not to cry. From a balcony above, Daniel watched the scene unfold, unseen by her. He remembered her laughter when she'd shoved his suitcase into the street. Tonight, he felt no pity, only a cold satisfaction. He whispered, "Fall, Emma. Fall further." Emma stormed into the penthouse, her heels striking the marble like warning shots. Charles was already there, glass in hand, staring at the skyline. "Why didn't you tell me everything was falling apart?" she demanded. He didn't turn. "Because you were too busy posing for cameras to notice." Her jaw dropped. "I stood by you while the world whispered." Charles laughed bitterly. "Stood by me? You stood on me. You paraded my name when it made you look powerful. Now that the ground shakes, you're panicking." Emma's throat closed. For a moment, she saw Daniel's face the night she threw him out, his eyes filled with disbelief as she spat that he wasn't enough. The memory burned. "Don't you dare compare me to him," she snapped. Charles finally turned, his eyes bloodshot. "At least he didn't sell illusions. You left a man who loved you for a man who's already done with you." He shoved a stack of papers across the table. "Our accounts are frozen. Investors are pulling. The walls are closing in." Emma's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Each number mocked her. "We can fix this. We can. We." Charles cut in. "There is no we. There's me, clawing to survive, and you, dead weight I should have cut off months ago." The word struck harder than she expected. Emma stumbled back, eyes wide. The betrayal wasn't subtle, it was surgical. That night, her phone buzzed with headlines, Emma Lancaster's lavish life in question. Photos of her storming from boutiques, reports of unpaid pledges, whispers of Charles's failing empire. Her image was shredded across tabloids. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in the boardroom, papers neatly stacked before him. Clara grinned. "The press has teeth now. They're circling her." Daniel's fingers tapped the table. "Not yet. Let her suffocate in whispers. The reveal comes when she has no breath left to scream." Hawthorne adjusted his glasses. "She still believes you're broke. That illusion is her blindfold." Daniel leaned back, recalling a night when Emma mocked his worn shoes. "You'll never give me the life I deserve," she'd said. Tonight, he wore a tailored suit, the same color as those shoes once were, a private reminder that she'd mistaken simplicity for weakness. At a charity gala days later, Emma tried to salvage what was left. She wore her brightest gown, her highest heels, forcing smiles that cracked at the edges. But as she stepped onto the stage, the host's voice cut like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, please note that last month's pledge from Mrs. Lancaster has been rescinded due to insufficient funds." Gasps filled the hall. Cameras flashed. Emma froze, her face pale beneath the lights. From the crowd, a man's voice rose, cold and clear. "Seems wealth doesn't stay where there's betrayal." Emma's eyes darted through the audience, and for a heartbeat, she swore she saw Daniel's silhouette. Her knees wobbled. Her empire wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing, and she couldn't tell if the hands pulling it down were Charles's, or Daniel's. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, violins humming in the background, the city's elite gathered for a fundraising gala. Emma stepped onto the red carpet, her gown radiant, her smile painted carefully over exhaustion. For one fragile moment, she believed she could rebuild her image. But the crowd's whispers told another story, snickers, murmurs, the scrape of judgment echoing louder than applause. Charles abandoned her halfway down the aisle, muttering, "Handle yourself," before drifting toward a rival investor. Emma clenched her fists, forcing her head high. But when she reached the stage, the host's words gutted her in one stroke. "Due to discrepancies, Mrs. Lancaster's pledges have been withdrawn. We regret the misrepresentation." Gasps filled the hall. Emma's chest hollowed. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and froze. Daniel. He stepped forward, sleek in a tailored suit, no longer the man she had kicked into the street. Cameras flashed as if the universe demanded every angle of her humiliation. Emma's lips parted, a whisper escaping. "You." Daniel's voice carried, calm and razor-sharp. "Yes. Me. The man you discarded for being poor. The man you spat on while I built something you couldn't imagine." The board chair, Evelyn Torres, joined him, holding a folder. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the majority shareholder of Reynolds Corporation. Mr. Daniel Whitmore." The room erupted. Emma staggered back, her world tilting. "No, this isn't real. You were nothing." Daniel's jaw tightened, memories slicing through him, Emma's sneer as she shoved his suitcase into the street, her voice hissing, "You'll never give me the life I deserve." Tonight, he gave her the answer. "I inherited $50 million, he said evenly. "A legacy my father secured in a trust. I didn't flaunt it because real wealth doesn't need a parade. While you mocked my shoes, I built empires. While you called me nothing, I was becoming everything you'd beg for." Gasps and murmurs cut the air. Emma trembled. "You lied to me." Daniel's eyes darkened. "No. You never asked. You were too busy chasing the next glittering cage." On the screens above, Hawthorne projected Emma's betrayal in black and white, emails to Charles mocking Daniel, laughing about ditching the broke dreamer, promises of loyalty traded for jewelry and status. The crowd's faces twisted from shock to disgust. Charles smirked coldly from the corner. She was useful for a while. But a sinking ship doesn't deserve a captain. He turned his back, abandoning her in plain sight. Emma's knees buckled. Tears blurred her vision. "Daniel, please, not like this. We loved." "Loved?" Daniel's voice cut through her like glass. "You loved money. And tonight, money loves me, not you." The audience applauded, the sound like a gavel sealing her fate. Emma collapsed into a chair, mascara streaking her cheeks, her empire in ashes, her pride shredded. Daniel didn't smile. His revenge wasn't joy, it was justice. He turned to the cameras, voice steady. "Betrayal always comes full circle. And tonight, it has." The hall erupted with thunderous applause. Emma's sobs were drowned out by the sound of her own ruin. The ballroom emptied like a tide pulling back from shore, leaving Emma stranded in its glittering wreckage. Chairs scraped, whispers clung to the air like smoke, and every step someone took away from her felt like another nail sealing her coffin. She stood trembling beneath chandeliers that had once dazzled her, the mascara streaks on her cheeks darker than the velvet drapes. A flashbulb cracked, and she spun, catching one last camera pointed her way. But this time, there were no flattering captions to follow. Only headlines waiting, "The woman who mocked a billionaire, exposed." "Emma," a voice murmured. It was her mother, Margaret, slinking from the shadows, perfume thick enough to choke. She reached for Emma's arm. "We can fix this. If you admit stress, if you blame Daniel." Emma yanked free, her laugh ragged, hollow. You sold me out to him once already. How much did he pay you this time? Margaret's face flickered with shame, but she turned away before it could harden into apology. The crowd's cold shoulders swallowed her up, leaving Emma abandoned by even the woman who birthed her. She staggered outside, heels wobbling against the marble steps. Paparazzi lights exploded in her face. Questions shot like arrows. Emma, did you know he was wealthy? Was the affair with Charles real? Do you regret leaving him? Each word clawed at her ribs. She tried to answer, but her voice cracked, no words coming. Cameras caught the collapse, and silence became her confession. Across the street, Daniel emerged into the night flanked by Evelyn Torres and Hawthorne. He didn't look at her, not directly, but the power in his stride burned worse than any glare. A driver opened the door of a sleek black car. Inside, Daniel's new world glowed, polished leather, flashing phones, allies leaning in. Emma's nails dug into her palms. For years she had dreamt of sitting in cars like that, of being ushered into rooms where her name meant something. And now, the man she had called worthless carried her stolen dream like a crown. Daniel, she cried, voice breaking, desperation cutting through the cameras. He paused at the door, head tilting just enough for their eyes to meet. For a heartbeat, the years between them, the dinners, the broken promises, the cruel words, hung suspended. Her voice fell to a whisper. Please, don't leave me like this. The memory of her sneer that night came back to him sharp as glass. You'll never give me the life I deserve. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, only lowered into the car and pulled the door shut. The engine purred, sleek and merciless, and the car slid into the city night without a glance back. Emma stood frozen, cameras still flashing, the weight of her downfall crushing in. Betrayal had circled back, brutal and complete. The woman who once kicked a man for being poor now found herself begging scraps from the same man, only to be left in the gutter of her own arrogance.